Hi, this is Dr. Kimberley Linert, and you're listening to Incredible Life Creator Podcast. My guest today is Dolores Hirschmann. Dolores is an internationally recognized strategist and coach. She helps clients clarify their idea worth sharing, design their communication strategies, and implement business growth systems. Her clients become speakers and authors and take their message to larger audiences like TEDx and beyond. She works through group coaching, workshops, one-on-one coaching, as well as public speaking. Dolores is a writer, TEDx organizer, and participant in TED conferences. She is a CTI certified and ICF accredited coach and has a business degree from the Universidad de San Andres, Argentina. Originally from Buenos Aires, Dolores speaks fluent Spanish, English, and French and lives in Dartmouth with her husband and 4 children. Welcome to the podcast, Dolores.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, so why don't we start out by you telling us a little bit about you, where you grew up, and how you got to where you are today.
Thank you. So you can hear, well, you say beautifully in the intro, but you can hear in my accent. I'm originally from Argentina. And for those that don't know, the main language in Argentina is Spanish. It's at the tippy top end of South America. And yeah, so I grew up in Argentina, and at the age of 24, a friend of mine called and said, well, there's this American in Buenos Aires. It was literally December 19, probably, like today. Mm-hmm. I know we're dating, but, and she's like, well, I can't take this guy out for dinner, my boyfriend, she and this person, you have to come. And I'm like, oh, I have other plans. Well, you have to come. Well, that's how I met my husband. And 3 months after the day we met, we got engaged. And 7 months after we got engaged, we met actually. 7 months after the day we met, we got married. And the truth is that I am an Argentinian granddaughter of Austrian immigrants who had to leave Austria because of Second World War. And I remember at the time where I was making the decision, my husband and I had a great relationship, and we still do. But at the time, he said, look, let's start in the U.S. because you speak English. I don't speak Spanish. And he's 8 years older than me, so I was just out of college, and he was a little bit more settled. He's like, let's start in the U.S., and if you don't love it, we can go back. So it's like, okay. And I always thought about the concept of immigrants and migration in that I chose to come here, fully aware, fully conscious, fully free, while my grandparents didn't. And so there's just a lot of conversation in my head. Has always been curious about the journey different people's journey on being raised in a country and then ending up most of their life in another one, because the reality is that I will forever have an accent. So I will forever be a foreigner in the U.S., but I'm 47 now, and so in 3 years, I would have lived in the U.S. the same amount of time that I've lived in Argentina. And in 4 years, it would have been here more than in Argentina, but in some unconscious way, home is always Buenos Aires. So it's kind of like, I know, that's a whole conversation we could have.
Yes. So when you got here, your husband, at least he would have a job or some way to make income. Did you start a family or did you start working? And how did you find
my place? Yeah. So as you can tell, I'm an extrovert. And so when I left Argentina, I did leave. I mean, at the time, it was like the perfect storm because we met when I had just graduated from university. I had submitted and defended my paper in August of that year. And I had broken up with my boyfriend kind of the next day because I spent 3 months in Malaysia doing community work. So literally when I met my husband was 2 weeks after coming from that trip, and I had no job, no work, no boyfriend. But I did have a huge network. And when I came here, it was really hard. First of all, because I moved to the U.S. to a suburban community, suburbs of Boston. So it's not like there was a lot of opportunities for a 25-year-old at the time. You kind of need to be in a city, right? And it's 1997. Nowadays, life is so different. But back then, you needed a job to go, in an office. There wasn't remote work. Like it's really, and so it was really hard for the first 2 years. We did start a family within 2 years, but I also, before that, I started working for a nonprofit out of New York City. And I spent 7 years working with them, and I was a director of online learning. We built the first online learning platform for high school students in the world. We had a grant from Microsoft, and it was a fascinating project. So to answer your question, yes, my husband was working for his family business at the time, and I started working with a nonprofit. And soon after, we had our first son, and right after, we had our other 3. So we had 4 kids in 6 years, and so I worked for the nonprofit until my 3rd child was born. And at the time, I was having a baby and releasing the 2nd version of the software, and it was kind of, I had 2 babies, and I chose to stay home. Well, I chose to let go of the other baby because I didn't know if I could manage both. Little did I know, I should have kept it, but okay. And then when I did that, I pretty quickly understood that I needed a project, because as a mom, I have a lot of energy, and there's only, I needed an intellectual project that could give me a space for my personal and professional growth while being a mom full time. And so that's when I starting businesses. And I started a clothing company. You see the logo behind me. I don't know if you can see it, but I started a clothing company with handmade and handloom clothing done in Argentina by a co-op of low-income women. And after that, I started a language school because, as my mom said, why can't you just hire a tutor? No, I had to start a whole school so my kids could speak Spanish. So it was an after-school program, and we're teaching Spanish, French, and Chinese. So I had 6 teachers, 150 students, young students, adults, a partnership with Rosetta Stone. It was like the whole thing. And then I think some of your listeners might have felt this way at some point. Then at 38, I looked at my LinkedIn profile and my resume, and I said, who am I? And what do I do with this background? Because it felt like I had great experiences, but nothing made sense with each other. Or so I thought, right? From my perspective. And I was a little lost. I have to say it was a moment where nothing was wrong in my life, meaning my children were healthy, my relationship with my husband was great, but I just was lost in myself and feeling like, what do I do with my life? And I'm sure, I don't know if you felt that once, but I'm sure some people in our audiences may have felt that. And that's when I went back to school for coaching. One, so that I didn't know what coaching was at the time, but I felt that by becoming a coach, not only would I have a marketable skill that people could relate to, but also I needed to go through the journey of understanding who I was, what I wanted, and looking forward, what did I really want to build?
Wow. And as you did that, what did you discover?
So I discovered a few things. The first thing I discovered is that the one thing I do really well, and I've done really well since I was very, very young, was make things clear. So I made friends with a group of women, and it was 4 of us from the group. In the last weekend, it was like 5 months and 1 weekend a month. And the last weekend we went out for dinner, and I had made a gift for each one of them. Based on our conversations, I kind of picked the one word that each one of them kind of owned and kind of stood for. And I gave each one of them this little phrase. And for me, it was clarity. This was before I even had Masters in Clarity or had that name. I was just operating under Dolores Hirschmann at the time. But the truth is I learned what my unique brilliance was when I did the coaching training. And most important, I learned that it is a responsibility to give myself permission to be in my unique brilliance and to shine. Because if I don't give myself permission to shine, how can I give other people permission to shine? Meaning that if I can't shine, then you can't either. But if I can, then you can, and everybody can. is that when we deny something for ourselves, we think we're being selfless or being like humble. But the truth is that if we don't deserve it, then who does? Because we're all human beings.
Yes, yes. And that makes sense to me because I'm one of those people that I have a message and I wanted to get it out, but at the same time, I didn't want to be the center of attention.
Yeah, but if you have a message that the world needs to hear, who are you to stop it?
And that's what I actually came to. I said, okay, I need to start shining. So I wrote a book. I started this podcast, and there's more to come.
I love it. I love it. I love it.
And I encourage other people to do the same thing because we, everyone else suffers because they don't get your gift.
Yeah, exactly. And we suffer because I believe that each one of us, we're not a coincidence. Like, we were born in purpose and for a purpose. And if we don't honor that purpose and don't give it space and don't give it energy and don't give it support, then we are like a flower that never blooms.
Oh, I love that. That's a great metaphor. That's so true.
And in the summer, in the spring, all we want is flowers to bloom. It makes me happy. I mean, right now I have those poor dry flowers in the back, but I love having fresh flowers. It just brings us joy. So imagine if each one of us, human beings, were given the chance to fully bloom. What can the world look like? What is possible?
Yes. So when you're working with people, either in groups or one-on-one, how do you help them find what flower they are
and how to bloom?
Help them to bloom.
So I'm kind of an odd duck in this space and in this industry because I am an executive coach. I have all the tools to help someone develop internally, but I also have all the tools, and I've done it many times, to get an idea and turn it into something that has impact. It could be a business, it could be a nonprofit, it could be a movement, whatever it looks like. The how doesn't matter. The fact that matters is that you turn this idea that you had into some way of having an impact in the world. And so for me, the way I go about my work is I believe that my idea, who's my ideal client? Mm-hmm. My ideal client is ideas. Mm-hmm. So our ideas. So ideas are my ideal client. They happen to live in people's heads. Yeah. and so my work is to work with my client that holds the idea, and understand who they are and what makes them feel alive. Like what is a natural way that they operate in the world? And that's where I bring all my coaching skills. When I understand who they are and how they operate in the world, and we get really clear on this idea that they have, that they want to have an impact, then I start understanding, okay, what is the best way, let's say, for Kimberly to bring this message out? Are you an extrovert? Are you an introvert? Are you a people person? Are you a systems person? Are you a creative? Are you a grower, right? And so depending on who the client is, then we design a plan of action that takes into consideration who you are, and then create a way to go about it with the right support, with the right tactics, and with the right systems that complement who you are. Because I don't believe that there is one size fits all on how to bring an idea out into the market and have an impact. There's a trillion ways to do it. And each one of us can be unique about how we do it.
Yeah, that makes sense, because even in communication, people have a very unique way of communicating with each other or communicating an idea from person to person. Mm-hmm. And, not everybody's going to be that get out there, be excited. There's going to be these other people that have this quiet
way about it,
way of doing it.
Yeah. And so because my expertise is clarity, and because I'm equally creative as I am analytical, the way I operate, the way I think from the perspective of frameworks. And what I mean by a framework, think of a sandbox. I remember when my oldest son was 3, we built a sandbox for him. And the sandbox was really 4 pieces of wood hammered together on the ground. And on top, inside you put sand. But without the 4 pieces of wood, my son would have never been able to play in sand that stayed kind of contained. So a framework, or a clarity framework, the way I call them, is really kind of a sandbox. And the client brings the sand, and in it they can have an environment and a space for creation, but it's truly, there's a freedom in the box in some way. I wouldn't call it a box, but there's a freedom and a space for creativity within a certain boundary or framework that gives you direction and keeps you going on, in a lane, like operating in a lane and going faster and deeper versus throwing spaghetti to the wall.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense, because I know I have an art room, and so I go there and I have all my tools and I do art. So basically you have your sandbox with all your tools and all your creativity, and you just bring it in that one focused place.
Yeah, and that way my clients can get really clear on what their idea is, really clear how to communicate it, what is the unique way, the proprietary system on how they bring that idea, what is the ideal business model that aligns with the life they want to have. Because we can all make money, mm-hmm. but not everybody can make money and take 2 weeks off for holidays and serve a lot of clients in a way that doesn't get overwhelming. So it's about the business model, how you go about it. And then I always talk about in the going to market, I don't talk about sales funnels, I talk about trust funnels. I talk about how do you connect with people in a way that every moment of the connection, you have to think of it as a first date. Like someone that is listening to your podcast for the first time is having a first date with you, or someone that has been listening to your podcast for a long time is having a first date with me. Mm-hmm. And based on the experience of listening to this conversation, they'll say, I like that conversation. Now I want to find out more. And they'll go somewhere and Google me. So it's about the quality and what happens in that first date that makes a person say, I want a second date. And that second date might be reading a blog. And then the third date might be sending an email. And the fourth date might be having a consultation or whatever it is. And maybe the 10th date is I will buy a product. But before that, there was a journey that we both kind of danced around, and we were building a relationship of trust.
I love that, because anybody who's in business is now very familiar with sales funnels, and sometimes they seem ethical and okay, and sometimes it's like they give you this really bad feeling. But to go through a trust funnel is amazing. And yeah. In this world when there's so many possibilities, I love it. So she's showing when this is on video, you'll see it, the trust funnel. It is drawn out.
It's actually a thing.
So, that is beautiful. So, talk a little bit about your method and how you help people.
Yeah. So I have a methodology called the IDEA method. And that is kind of the foundation of our work. And what we do is the IDEA method has 9 layers of clarity. I actually have an assessment called the clarity assessment. And the 9 layers of clarity are clarity around your core idea. Like, what is it really that you bring to the world? Clarity around your proprietary system. How do you do it in a unique way? Clarity around your business model. Clarity around how you package and bundle your services on your products. Clarity around your trust funnel, right? How do you engage with your audience? Clarity around who your market is and who do you want to take a stand for. Clarity around your own mindset. Can you, or whether you believe you can or you can't, I think it was Henry Ford said, whether you believe you can or you can't, both are right. Mm-hmm. Like whatever you believe is what's going to happen. And then clarity around your vision, and clarity around your, what I call the company habits. What are the recurring actions that you must take for your company to grow? And this idea method is the foundation of our curriculum, if you want. All of my clients go through this process. And what we do is we walk with our clients. So in our mastermind, our clients work privately with me, one-on-one, as a strategy and clarity coach. And then they work with my team. We call them implementation specialists. So they will meet with my team to take action on the strategy that they defined with me. And we also, of course, have a community. We have group calls. We have implementation days. And we have live in-person workshops 3 times a year where I go deep in a topic. So once early, I think it's March, that we talk about business models. And then in June, we talk about trust funnels. And then in November, we talk about speaking. So basically, I've created a way where you not only get the strategy and the coaching, you get the space to actually take action.
Which is so critical because there's so much information out there, courses, you name it. I've had coaches in the past where they say, okay, I want you to do this, this, and this. Well, it's overwhelming.
Yeah.
I know what I'm supposed to do now, but I'm running a business. I have a family, and then you could implement this, this, and this. And I'm like, it's just too much. So to have someone to actually take your hand and say, okay, let's do this step. Let's do this together. Now let's do this. Let's do this. Is just critical for success.
Exactly. It's you said it. It's just there. I have a mug here, and it says clarity, action, and impact. And so in our Masters in Clarity, you get the support to gain the clarity you need, and you are held by the hand as you take action, because impact is your responsibility, is a client's responsibility.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Just focus on impact and what your gift is. And tell me a little bit about how important it is to talk about what you stand for rather than what you do.
How many times have you gone into a networking event or heard someone introduce themselves or their work, and they go into the nitty-gritty of what they do? Well, so for example, I can go into a networking event and say, I have an idea, I have a methodology, it's called the idea method, it has 9 layers of clarity, blah, 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 blah. You're not listening because you're like, okay, whatever. But what if I were to say, I stand for ideas that have an impact in the world? And then I shut my mouth. And then you say, oh, wait, I want to learn more. Well, I say, I believe that each one of us has a purpose and in purpose, and that our ideas have the potential of changing the world. And I work with these ideas and help them grow. And then I shut up. And then you say, whoa, that's really cool. How do you do that? Well, I've designed a methodology where it has 9 layers of clarity. So here's the thing. It's not that I'm not saying how I work. Is that I will say how I work based on someone listening to what I stand for first. Finding that resonance and saying, okay, what she stands for resonates with me. So I want to learn more. It's almost like you go on a first date, right? You're young or not, and you go on a first date, and all you hear is like, well, I want to have 2 dogs, and I want to have a picket fence, and my house is going to paint it blue, and when I'm 52, I want to buy a blue dress. And you've never met. Like, would you go on a second date with that person? Like they went way down on a rabbit hole that did not include you, right? But even that first date, you talk about, this is what I love to do. Tell me about you. And then you listen, and it becomes a conversation. Then the trust and the relationship begins to form in a magical way that with time, you do talk about how many dogs you want to have, but it's a conversation you do together.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it did. And so when someone is going to come up with that core message and they're clarifying their core message, I mean, you said that in a bite size, which you made it sound so simple. Like, I stand for this, and you said like 3 or 4 words. And I know it's so hard for people to actually get that clarity to the point where they can put it down into even a sentence sometimes. So how do people do that? You made it just sound so easy and magical, but I know I've been there trying to figure out what to say.
Well, so let me just I'm looking at your, so let me just take a stand here, take a stab at you, Kimberly. And I believe that based on what I know about you, you take a stand for a full, happy life.
Yes.
And you believe that each one of us is capable and is deserving of a full, happy life, right?
Right.
And so from that place, let's say that you just say that. It would resonate with most people.
Yeah.
And they'll say, but they'll be a little cautious, like, that sounds great, but I haven't found it yet. For whatever reason, happiness has evaded me. Or for whatever reason, I don't feel like I deserve it. How do you go about that? And you say, well, for the last whatever many years, I have seen life through people's eyes in my optometrist practice. And I realized that it takes more than eyes to really see what's in front of you. I'm making it up.
Yeah, but that's great.
Great start. And that truly is that when we go beyond what we can see and start really acknowledging and being grateful for things we have in your life, we don't even know that we have them, then we can start a journey of seeing the beauty, not just what's not working. And that's the first steps of having a full, happy life.
Yes. Well, thank you.
Again, I'm ready to record it.
Simple. That's awesome.
but in all fairness, so I walk my clients. So the way I'm very different from other business coaches is that I am a life coach. I am an executive coach. So I have the capacity to connect my clients to their essence and their joy first. And so when they are not just connected physically, like they feel it, but connected intellectually, they can verbalize it. Then it's a matter of just bringing that language into the work. Mm-hmm. And then matching it with the words and the language that the market uses as well. And then you have a marriage. You can't have just one or the other. It has to be both.
Yes, you do. And, how important is it to actually have your insides aligned with your outsides?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I always say when I am a speaker coach, and sometimes people ask me, do you coach the performance, really, like the moment on stage? And I say, well, obviously I'll give some basic tips, but I said, I actually help my clients fall in love with their work and their essence in such a way that when they get on stage, I don't really need to micromanage how they stand, because if you're in fear, you're going to stand like this. If you are in love with what you have, you're going to stand like this. You're going to open your chest. You're going to stand tall. Your head's going to be straight, kind of naturally, because your body is simply the reflection of how you're feeling. So if we really clarify and connect you in a deep way with the amazing work that you do, you can't stop. Like, it's almost like when you see a pretty picture, you know how they say the cat memes or whatever, you can't help but smile. Like, it's, even if you're grumpy, like your face will smile. Or something funny happens, even if you're sad, you will laugh. There's like a physical reaction to the feeling or to the experience. So when you design the experience that you're having with your own self and your work, your body will match it.
That makes sense. And, you know, speaking of the TEDx and the TED stages, I know there are many people who would love to be on a TED stage. Like, it was like one of their number one on their bucket list things to do. So talk about that, and like, how do you get on one? And
what does that look like?
yeah.
So I have never spoken on a TEDx stage because I've never applied. I have been a TEDx organizer, so I've been in the role of putting people on TEDx stages, on my stage primarily, and then I'm no longer organizing mine, and I do help people get on TEDx stages. And the truth, Kimberly, is like everything else. Clarity is first. It's like, what is that one idea that you want to shout from a rooftop or from a TEDx stage? A clear, concise communication of that comes first. And one of the questions that I get from a lot of speakers, they say, well, but my idea is not really unique. And I always say, well, chances are it's not. Because unless you've just found the cure for some disease, the truth is that there's probably a lot of people talking about happiness. There's a lot of people talking about impact. So, there's a lot of people talking about your topic, and thank God, because we need all the help we can get. But what makes it unique is how you approach it and who you are. And so it's like, okay, let's clarify the idea, and let's clarify why you are uniquely positioned to work on this idea. And that makes this idea and the way you go about it unique. So if someone is listening and they want to be on those kinds of stages, the first thing you need to do is understand and clarify your idea to a place that you can share it in about one sentence. And then it's about Googling and finding events in your neighborhood or in your community or in your city and reaching out like everything else. Ask. Say, hey, I'm interested in maybe presenting. What is the process?
Yeah.
When all else fails, go the human way. Just pick up the phone and call someone.
Yes. For when you call instead of text.
Yeah.
So, have you had, as you've gone on your journey and you've worked with so many people, any aha moments or moments of discovery of something you didn't think of, or it just occurred to you, something new?
In general, so I was a TEDx organizer because I love ideas, and I asked myself, what is that something I would do for free all day long, and I would say I would hang out with people with big ideas. And in that role, when I was the one with my team accepting the applications for speakers, and we would have hundreds of applications, and we only had like 15 slots open. So in that role, I realized even seasoned speakers who had been out there for years, how hard it was for them to really be succinct in communicating the essence of their work, and how much there was a need, again, even for seasoned speakers, to have a mirror or someone to really take their language out of their head and help them make it a little bit more condensed. I just didn't, again, back to the unique brilliance that we started this conversation with, is that what comes easy to you, you discount it as a need in the marketplace. Mm. I just didn't know how much people needed that I had. And if you're listening to this podcast, think about something that comes so easy to you that you would never build a business around it, because it would be almost like, no, I can't, it doesn't feel like hard work.
Yeah.
So I shouldn't do that. So that comes so easy to you that you almost would do for free all day long. That's what you have to build your business around.
Okay. Yeah. And I think that is so true. I love doing what I'm doing here with the podcast. And right now I'm not making any money with it. It's just my gift.
I think you do, yeah.
Way of expressing, and I would do it all day for free.
And the truth is that when I did the TEDx, for years, I was something I did for a volunteer. I didn't realize how it would transform my business and how it would shape the way I went about my work until years later. So it was years of just giving my time because why not? Because I loved it. It filled me up. And again, if you're listening to the podcast, go do something for free and you will find your life's work in the process. And you, Kimberly, give it time. It will show up.
Thank you. Yeah. So at this point in your life, what gives you the most happiness, joy, fulfillment, fills you up?
I love, so personally, I have 4 wonderful children and 2 in college, 2 at home. And I just love that with my husband, we've been able to build a peaceful home. It's a good home. It's a home where people want to come and hang out, friends and, my kids' friends. It's a safe and peaceful home, and that brings me a lot of joy. So I think I am in a stage of my life that socks on the table in front of the fireplace with a good book makes me a lot happier than maybe a trip to Disney World. So the small moments I'm learning and appreciating more and more, especially as my children are leaving. It's just, they're now coming. My daughter's coming home tomorrow. My son is here. And I just look forward to starting tomorrow to just close my computer and really disconnect until January and just play board games, read next to each other in front of the fireplace. We ski as a family, cook with them. Like the small moments is what brings me a lot of joy personally. And professionally, I was with 3 clients yesterday. We're doing the wrap-up call for the year. And one was like her eyes were sparkling. I think she grew financially. She grew like 40% this past year. And that's a lot of money. And she said, now I know that in 2020, I can bring my husband into the business and we can work this together. And just seeing the joy, she's a young mom, she has babies. And for me to witness my clients really transforming their lives and choosing how they mother, how they father, because they were able to figure out how they match the life they wanted with the work that they could do. I mean, there's nothing more fulfilling to me than that.
So I know there are many people who would love to work with you personally, professionally for their business. They might have an idea that maybe it's been sitting there for 15 years. I don't know.
Yeah.
They might have an idea that they want to bring to life. How do they find you? How do they work with you? And what kind of offerings do you have? You mentioned several different things.
Yeah. So the best way to find me is to go to mastersinclarity.com. And there's a button there that says start here, and you can book a consultation with my team. So the best way to work with me, if you are in that place of, I want my idea to grow, I want it to support me financially, I want to really spend my life having an impact with my idea, is through one of my 2 masterminds. And what, this masterminds is a word that is used in many ways. The way that I look at it is a program that includes private coaching with me, group time with each other, with a community led by me, and the content and curriculum that will guide you through the clarity. And so in these programs, and there's 2 simply because it's a program for clients that are making less than $100,000 in their service-based business. And so they're just in that stage of, I want to get to 100,000. So we have a program for that is really focused on action. It's strategy, but a lot of action and private support on taking action. And then Clarity Mastery is for our clients that are over the 100,000. They're probably more in the mid 7, like in the 500 or early 7 figures in the 1 million. And they have a lot more strategy with me, more personal time, and they bring their teams to the calls with me so that the client and I work on strategy and the team is right there ready to implement it. And that is the best way to use our time, because it's all about clarity for the sake of action, not just clarity for the sake of clarity.
Right. And any last words on people living a life of happiness, fulfillment, joy?
Yes, I want you, if you're listening to this podcast, I want you to imagine, what does your ideal day look like? Think of a working day, Monday through Friday, and grab a piece of paper and a pen and write down what happens on that ideal day. Because that ideal day is what you would want to walk into. And call me and I'll help you create the life and the work so that you can manifest your ideal day.
Yes, that's beautiful. Thank you so much. And thank you for helping so many people put their ideas out into the world and also get that personal satisfaction that happens when you do that.
You're welcome. You're very welcome. I really love my work, and I just love watching my clients grow.
All right. Well, we'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you, Kimberly.
Mm-hmm.